Good morning, guys. Hello. What is it today? Wednesday, 19th of December. Nearly Christmas. Young Gary has messaged me on my Dora build and has asked about how I make the steering work on my Thunder models, Scammels. So you can see one here, still unfinished. As you can see, this is the R100, and he's asking basically how I can make the steering work like this. Well, I've got this model, Gary. Remember, don't glue the differential, leave the differential stirred, and then your rear suspension will still all work and you'll get full articulation of your suspension. I know you don't want to play with it, but it's handy for putting it on uneven surfaces, and it also guarantees all 6 wheels will be on the ground when you finished. So here you go. I'm going to put this quick tutorial together just to show him basically and show you all how I go about it. I'm not an expert, this is just how I go about it. If any of you guys want to see any more information on how I do stuff, just ask. Right, so here we are then. We've got the 3 models here. I've got the on the left here at the bottom, we've got the tank transporter. In the middle, we've got the R100, and then on the end here, we've got the SV2S. Front suspension steering is identical on all 3 kits. So you've got different length chassis, different styles of chassis, and going on from there, different rear suspension, everything, all beautifully and accurately reproduced, by the way, by Thunder models. I started building these kits a long time ago and got bored and moved on to other stuff. I do need to get these back out because they're nearly finished, to be quite honest. So yeah, I will get back on these, I promise, and if you guys nag me enough, I will. So basically, this is what Gary's asking for, is how to make the steering work. Now, I'm going to use them all as an example because they all vary in slight ways. Let's start with this one actually. If we look at the, let's look at the R100 because it's a lighter colour, easier to see. So here you can see I've got a brass pin sticking out. This is a 0.8mm brass pin. And the reason that's there is because with this truck, the front fenders steer with the wheel. So you can make your steering work and everything, but the front fenders need to steer with the wheels. So you need to drill down through the hub and actually make this brass rod steer with the hub. So that brass rod is actually not glued to the axle, it's glued to the hub. It's glued to, where's my pointer? It's glued to this part here, not the axle. So what it's doing is actually pivoting on that brass rod, and it's turning with it so that when the actual wheel steers, the mudguard steers with it. The mudguard will actually be glued, or fender if you're in the US, will be glued to that brass pin, obviously be shortened. So that's the first bit. And also you've got the pitman arm and the steering arm here, and basically this end of it also needs to be glued to the rod that comes out that goes with the, this one doesn't have the rod in, but basically that needs to be glued to the steering arm that's coming out through and gluing into the fender, so that basically when you steer the wheels, that will steer with it. Okay, so if that was glued together, you can imagine that would go round with the wheels as they're steered. And then what Gary's asking about is these pivots here on the tie rod, how I do that. Well, you can see that on this one, if you look closely, if I can get in there, if I can make it focus. If you look here in this area, you can see that I haven't done anything at all. All I've done is drilled out the arm, the steering arm on the hub, and put a brass rod, glued it into the actual tie rod. And now these slots here in the suspension actually stop that tie rod from coming out. What have I done on this one? This one's the same. Now on this one I've actually fitted the little washers, which I'm going to show you how to make now. And you can see that what I've got here is the actual brass rod is glued into the steering arm and then drilled out the steering arms here, and then glued on this washer. Let's get that in focus so you can see it. There you go. So basically what do you need? First of all, be a little bit brave. The main tool that people I think forget about is this. It's a sharp tool. You can make this out of a dart or a pin or anything, but you need to be able to center pot. So if you're going to let me find a piece of scrap plastic. If I wanted to drill a hole in this piece of plastic here, then if I just start drilling, I can't be very precise. But if I've made a mark, say I've scored a mark on this, and I know that where I've made this mark, come on, focus, there you go, I wanted that to be my centre. I can pick that up with the pin and then just make a little indentation, check that indentation is correct, and then I can go right in this and push harder, and then I've got a centre pot mark where I needed that hole to be. And when you're working on tiny little steering arms and stuff, you need to make sure that hole is in the middle. And now I can go along my drill, pick up that mark and drill, and I know that I'll be dead center on those center pot marks, as you can see there. So that's the first tool, and I think that's a really important tool. Then obviously you need a set of drills and a pin vise. Now if you're going to use 0.5 brass rod, I would drill a 0.55 or a 0.6 hole. This is the brass rod I use. It's from Albion Alloys. You get this in most model shops or Amazon or online or whatever. So yeah, you need brass rod, you need some plastic card. I use 10 thou plastic card or 0.25mm plastic card. And as I say, I've got 0.5 here. I would recommend using 0.8 for these vertical parts that go into the mud guards. If you use 0.5, they're going to be very bendy and easy to break off. So yeah, I would suggest if you're going to use 0.5, so in this instance here, the actual, I was going to try and get this to focus, the actual brass rod is glued into the tie rod but is pivoting in the steering arm. So I would drill both of those holes 0.55. The reason I drill the hole where the brass rod's gluing into a slightly bigger is so that the super glue's got somewhere to glue. Obviously if you drill it size for size, when you press the rod in, you're just going to push all the super glue out of the hole. And then you need to drill a little bit of clearance into the hole it's going into, so that when you paint it or whatever, it doesn't all just seize up. Now this kit lends itself perfectly, like I said earlier. With this you can just get away with drilling the actual tie rod and putting the brass rod in, and then because of this slot here, it won't allow the steering rod to come out. So that is being held in by that slot. You can see I can't pull it out. Yeah, so you just need to be careful when you assemble it, make sure you put it all together as one. But to make these little washers, like I've done here, if you look on here, you can see there's a little washer which is glued to the brass rod, so that now that can't be pulled out. Okay, so you've got the tie rod here, a brass rod glued into the tie rod through a drill hole in the steering arm, and then a little washer on top, which is what I'll show you how to make now. To make a washer to go over, you need a hole punch set. This is the hole punch set I use. I got this from modeltools.co.uk or Little Cars. And basically for this example I'm using two obviously different sized punches. One is about 2.5mm and one is about 0.5. So basically what you do is you start off with your small one, and so I'm off camera, so I'm going to put this into here and then put the top down, and then, sorry, it's that one, put my tool into there, just press through and make a couple of holes in this plastic card like so. So I've made a couple of holes there. As you can see, there's a couple of 0.5 holes, or whatever size it is. Now what I'm going to do now is pick this up and centralize it over that hole. But don't ever do it from this side, do it from the back. And you can see in there, I've used these ridiculously big punches so you can see the difference. So if I now come across, I can centralise that hole in there. And I know it doesn't quite look right because of the shadows or whatever, but that is centralised. And now I can turn that over, holding it all together, take this punch, put it over the top. Yeah, I can push it. And then what you've got there is a washer. Now it's slightly off center, but you know, doing this under the camera is not so easy. And what you do is, if you want 4 or 5, make 10 or 12 and use the best ones. So all you do then is just imagine this is my brass rod. I've glued the brass rod into the steering arm. I've put it through the drilled hole in the steering arm. I've glued it into the tie rod. I've glued it into the tie rod. I've put it through the drilled hole in the steering arm, and then I just put this over the top like so, put a dollop of super glue on it, trim it with a pair of cutters, just trim the top off like so, like that, yeah, and then give it a quick sand, and what you end up with is that basically. Okay, so I hope that's clear for you, Gary, and if you need any more information or help or whatever, then just ask. That's what I'm here for. I've got all the time in the world to help you guys. Just ask. I'll happily put these tutorials together for you. And just to show you once again, on this arm here, you can see I've done the same with the plastic washer. Yeah, plastic washer on there, and then just a dab of glue over the top. All right.